It's the Metro on WDET. I'm Robin Vincent. Michiganders are broadly against data centers, especially when they're proposed near their neighborhoods. There are concerns about electricity and water use and a general feeling that large tech companies have too much control in our lives. People have gotten particularly loud about those problems at some town hall meetings, like this one months ago in Saline Township before one of the largest data centers in the country was approved to be constructed in the area.
Where does this electricity need to come from? Where does this DTE have capacity to ramp up?
If you don't stop this kind of evil when it's at the door, and you let it in your community, it will destroy this community. We either fight it like our lives depend on it right now, or it's over.
You don't protect me. You don't protect my family. I put every penny into that home, into that land. We remodeled that house, and we built our dream home so I could raise my 5 small children. And nobody's here to protect me. Nobody's here to protect us.
These residents are not the only ones who have concerns. And at this point, 52 localities in Michigan have passed data center moratoriums. But are the concerns about hyperscale data centers overblown? And are there more benefits that townships aren't fully appreciating? Eric Paul Dennis is the Infrastructure Research Associate for the Citizens Research Council. A new report he did on data centers says their benefits often actually outweigh the costs.
Your report says that the fear of data centers is overblown, and also the benefits might not be as great as they are promised. Briefly, allay some fears for me. For those who are afraid of large-scale data centers, why are they wrong that electricity rates won't skyrocket and water won't be depleted?
Well, for me, the evidence just isn't there. So the Citizens Research Council is an independent, nonprofit, nonpartisan, fact-based policy analysis center. So when writing this report, I really looked at trying to find facts and evidence to back up the ideas that there are these very serious environmental negative consequences in the development of data centers. And there are here and there some places where these concerns are somewhat justified, but they're generally quite avoidable. And in the context of Michigan, I'm fairly well convinced that our regulatory structure allows us to avoid the negative impacts of these concerns.
Can you tell me about the examples where people are correct that their fears are warranted?
Well, so the thing that I would focus on the most, because this is a very complicated issue in the context of electricity prices, like the increase in rates, people purchase electricity from a utility. That utility is connected to a regional grid. In most of Michigan, utilities are connected to the regional grid operated by MISO,
the Mid-Continent Independent System Operator.
MISO hasn't really had very many problems with this, but in a different region, the PJM region, which includes states such as Virginia and Ohio that have seen rapid data center build-out, those customers have recently seen some impacts from data centers on their final utility bills. Most of the recent rate increases are not related to data centers, but a percentage of it is. So there is a justifiable concern that data centers could increase electricity rates, but there are ways that we can protect against that. And also the percentage of the increases that those customers have seen related to data centers is actually very low. There was a bunch of other stuff that was going on at the same time. Inflation in electrical equipment, inflation in the costs of fuel, natural gas, as well as changes that were made in what's called the accreditation process when purchasing electric capacity. You cannot discount the idea that data centers can increase electricity rates, but it's actually not that common and quite minimal. Regulatory agencies have now kind of gotten ahead of this, and I don't think it's going to be much of a concern for the future.
They're not necessarily the cause of rates going up in other places. I want to talk about water real briefly, and then we'll get to the benefits. Why are people's concerns about water overusage overblown?
Some data centers can use a lot of water, perhaps up to 5 million gallons per day, and there's additional water usage related to the power consumption that powers these data centers. That's actually kind of rare. It's a worst case scenario. Is a lot of water. It could be a problem if you are drawing from a watershed that is already depleted. In Michigan, most of our watersheds are not depleted. We have plenty of water. In fact, we're using less water now than we have basically since we've been measuring it. In certain cases, especially if drawing from wells, regulatory agencies, specifically EGLE, the Environment, Great Lakes, and Energy Department of the state of Michigan, will be looking at these things to make sure that water can be used sustainably. In most cases, I think that even a high usage of water can be used sustainably.
One of your big takeaways is that we need to analyze these hyperscale data centers on a case-to-case basis, that's really important. I will come back to the fears eventually because there are a lot of them that people have, and I want to give them due. But you do talk about the benefits. What are the biggest benefits that hyperscale data centers can offer the towns that they're located in?
The primary benefit is the tax revenue from property taxes. These things are very valuable. They are investing billions of dollars in a single site. And so, for example, the Oracle Stargate data center in Saline Township, that is likely to provide far more than half of their property tax revenue, their general budget in the future, which is going to allow them to provide better services, perhaps lower tax rates than everyone else, which can make a very prosperous community. If you can offer low property taxes and still offer good services, that's really good for your community. I'd point out that Loudoun County, Virginia, probably has more data center capacity than Michigan will ever have. It's kind of the epicenter of data centers. It's called Data Center Alley. That's a county of over 400,000 people. I think they get about half of their property taxes from data center properties. And it's not exactly a hellscape. It's a prosperous and growing community.
Are those some of the best examples? There's been a lot of pushback against the Saline Township data center, even though it has gone through and it is happening. Is that some of the best example that you have of data centers are coming in, they're not doing that much damage, and actually they're providing a ton of financial benefit to the community where they sit?
So if you look around the country where data centers have located and been in operation for a few years, I really don't see much evidence of negative impacts. The environmental impacts are negligible, if measurable at all. Even if they're using water, they're usually using water within a sustainable rate. I can't find much evidence that they are contributing pollution. I cannot find much evidence that they are drastically increasing power rates, and they are contributing a lot of tax revenue to local communities that allows them to provide better services and keep taxes lower for everyone else.
You make the case that data centers can actually reduce electricity rates. Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, so this isn't exactly economics 101. You would think that when the demand for a resource such as electricity increases, the price should also increase. But in utility economics, it kind of works the opposite. When you have a lot of demand for a product such as electricity, or this also applies to water or natural gas, it allows you to apply revenue from large users to fixed costs of the infrastructure, which decreases the burden of the costs on everyone else. And there are instances where this might not hold, but generally, and particularly in the case of Michigan, we have a power grid that is currently capable of providing much more power than we are now delivering within Michigan. So by data centers demanding a lot of power, consuming a lot of power, coming onto the grid that increases the revenue to local utilities, which then can apply that revenue to the fixed costs of the infrastructure, which decreases the costs on everybody else. And if we ever get to a point where we need to build a lot more infrastructure to serve future data center demand or future users, that might not hold, but for the near future, I think it's very likely to hold.
How much can data centers do to increase the amount of clean energy that we have? How many examples of them are there where they're adding a lot of solar power and therefore both getting us closer to our clean energy goals and reducing electricity rates?
That is quite common. Some of the larger, more established technology companies, Google, Microsoft, they have renewable sustainability goals. And when they site a data center, they also typically invest in renewable energy in the area to serve that data center. And that is the case in the proposed Google Van Buren data center. The data center in Saline is also contributing investments towards battery storage that'll go on DTE's grid. So again, this may not hold in all cases, but so far and in the near future, it seems like the investments in renewable energy and battery storage, and also, by the way, transmission infrastructure, which allows us to bring more renewable energy from wind sources in Iowa and the South where it's more sunny, that will allow all of Michigan's electricity customers to benefit from renewable resources on the back of these investments made by data center developers.
Yeah, because it's more easily moving energy from one place to another.
Correct.
This is The Metro on WDET, Detroit Public Radio. I'm Sam Corey, and I'm speaking with Eric Paul Dennis. He's the Infrastructure Research Associate for the Citizens Research Council, and he just came out with a report that says that people are too concerned about the problems that data centers cause or can cause, and that large-scale data centers can actually create some benefits. Eric, I think to your point, to your report's point, the biggest reason people are afraid of data centers is because they fear AI. They fear losing their jobs. They fear being even more disconnected from other people and chatbots replacing humans in terms of their own lives and their relationships. They fear big companies having more control over their lives. These companies that are producing data centers are extremely rich. What do you make of those concerns?
I understand them, and I think they are valid. We are now in a fully digital economy. And so to a large extent, these data centers are, I would classify them as essential infrastructure. They have really become the backbone of much of what we do. And that has had benefits, but it has also had costs. And I think it's human nature to focus on negatives more than positives. And so there has been for several years now this phenomenon of technology backlash or techlash. And with this new transition, not only from a digital economy, but to an AI-focused economy that is promising additional changes that imposes concerns for a lot of people, myself included. You know, we've never before had the opportunity to talk to these technology companies and tell them what we think about the changes that they're imposing on society and our economy. But now that they really need these hyperscale data centers to support the next phase of what they're proposing, they have to come into our communities and stand in a room with us. And so we get to meet them face to face and tell them what we think about them. And a lot of people don't trust them, don't like them. And I understand that.
A lot of people are quite angry and they don't like how technology has changed their lives. I want to put this to you. The biggest benefits that you note in the report and that we've been talking about is the community benefits, the benefits that towns can get if a hyperscale data center comes to them. I mean, Stargate in Saline Township is providing people with $1.6 million of tax revenue per year until 2039. I think one of the things that drives people a little batty here, though, is that they want more control. They feel powerless. This is a bit of a populist moment, I think, in many places around the country. And so it feels to some as though corporations, especially big ones, have all the control, and towns and cities and states have very little. And so in the case of Saline, it feels to some residents like even though they're getting benefits, they still have to go to a corporation to get them first instead of them, the public, being put before the corporation. I wonder what you make of that sentiment.
I think this is the world that we live in. We're in a capitalist society, and the money that funds public services generally comes from tax benefits that come from capitalism. I wouldn't say that we're powerless. A lot of communities are fighting data centers locating near them, and some of them have been successful. But I wonder if that's really in the community's best interest. Like I said before, I don't think that these things really have especially negative or even measurable negative environmental consequences. There are some risks. I think the risks can be managed. And if townships or local governments can find a way to say yes, I think they will be in a better fiscal position 5 or 10 years from now.
People associate very strongly AI with data centers. It seems like one of the things that I'm hearing from you that's implied is that, listen, we can regulate AI and still have data centers, and towns can get the benefits from those data centers. Is that right?
Yeah, and I think that we should be having more of a national and honestly global conversation about how we are incorporating AI into our society, economy, our daily lives. But another thing to keep in mind is that a lot of this is just the cloud. So in the case of the Selene data center, that is being developed by a subsidiary of a subsidiary of a subsidiary of Oracle, which is going to lease it to ChatGPT. So that entire thing is going to be running ChatGPT. In other cases, like if a data center is developed by Microsoft or Oracle, or if it's a co-location center that's available to multiple clients, this is basically running cloud services. This is what's running our email. This is what's running GPS. This is what's running our streaming services, the internet. And we've come to rely on these things. So again, I think that part is critical infrastructure. This different beast, these AI factories, that might become critical infrastructure at some point. So far, it hasn't been, and I think there's a lot of concerns about it. I think that's where a lot of the anxiety is coming from in opposition to these, is we don't know what AI is going to do, and so we're fighting data centers. But fighting data centers at a local level doesn't really impact the global implications of AI. And so I would caution about conflating these issues, because addressing them together doesn't address the individual issues very effectively.
If people want to be fighting AI, then, if people are really concerned about AI and they want more regulations, what is the more responsible way to do that? Because to your point, these data centers are coming to people's towns. People now have the opportunity to talk directly to these companies that some of them really don't like. What should they be doing if they want AI regulation?
I think we should be focusing on the potential negative impacts of AI, government surveillance, corporate surveillance, the ability of companies to sift through our data to manipulate the prices that they charge us for various products and services. There might be a valid need to impose laws that restrict those kinds of things.
The actual problem with data centers, bringing it back to data centers, the thing that you reported on, the thing that you studied, that they are possibly likely to cause noise pollution, especially the hyperscale ones. They can be so loud, you're writing that they can really cause people to feel them, the vibrations. Why is noise pollution such a big problem with data centers?
Yeah, I'm concerned about that. So these are, in some ways, industrial-sized facilities. It's not like a factory, but the cooling equipment associated with them, because these are basically machines that turn electricity into data manipulation, with heat being the primary byproduct of that. That heat needs to be expelled through these industrial-scaled cooling towers and fans and chillers and things like that. And there are some very unique acoustical aspects of that. Unlike water quality or air quality, sound is not regulated really by the federal government or even by the state government. It's left to local ordinances. And local ordinances usually exist to regulate noise pollution, but they were usually adopted in response to things like loud parties, dogs barking, things like that. And this is a totally different beast. Data centers have potentially these very low frequency sounds, maybe very tonal low frequency sounds. It gets kind of scientific, but basically local ordinances are not set up to be protective against these.
So localities need to step in, or the state needs to step in to have some sort of noise pollution law that protects people against what could be a fairly loud, noisy facility near them.
Potentially.
Ultimately, your report, as we noted, comes out somewhere in the middle on data centers. And honestly, in reflection, I mean, it doesn't even seem like the data center itself offers that much benefit. It's the company and the company benefits that come along with the data center. Because companies get the data center, then they give a whole bunch of tax money to a locality. I guess one of the things that I'm wondering, there are a bunch of localities that have now passed moratoriums on data centers, 52 of them in Michigan at this point. Your report is not in favor of moratoriums. And I guess I'm wondering why. Why not slow this down? Why not take some more time? Why not build some more trust with localities? And then once that has been done, allow for them to come in with the benefits that they offer?
Well, I wouldn't say the report is opposed to moratoriums. I don't think that they are really necessary. I think that the conversations that need to occur to permit data centers within a jurisdiction can occur within normal practices. If local government is very nervous about it, a moratorium might be appropriate so that they consider how these things can be included within their zoning code and their land use restrictions. But taking away that it's a data center, taking away that it might potentially be powering AI, it's a big building that uses electricity and kind of does not a whole lot else. It's not really that big of a deal. I think we have the ability to evaluate these things within current frameworks. It's kind of become a cultural phenomenon to oppose data centers. It's not really based on justifiable concerns in that they're really that much different from other light industrial land uses.
Eric Paul Dennis is the Infrastructure Research Associate for the Citizens Research Council. He spoke with the Metro's Sam Corey. After they spoke, electricity rates increased in Henrico County, Virginia, which is home to 37 data centers. Dominion Energy says it increased the rates due to inflation, rising fuel costs, the cost of grid equipment, and the need to make more grid investments. The Metro contacted Eric about this rate increase. He said that while data centers have caused headaches for grid managers in Virginia, the problems are not necessarily critical or unavoidable. He says, in fact, we appear to be managing the risks and even benefiting from the addition of data centers on the grid. It's the Metro on WDET. Coming up, gas prices have been high. And because of that, there's been an uptick of interest in electric vehicles. But not everyone is equally interested. We'll find out why. Stay with us.